The opinions expressed by Peter Wexler, Robert Quittner, Kyle Plotkin, Michael Hart, Nicholas Hamner, and guests on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of this network. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Any strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to the subjects covered. Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management LLC, aka BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM and Franklin Retirement Solutions are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BCM but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us again for another episode of Solving the Retirement Puzzle. I'm Nick Hamner, same as I ever was. And joining me this week, as they have every week so far, are Michael Hart and Kyle Plotkin. As you know, or maybe you don't, we spend this time on this podcast going over things that directly or indirectly affect your retirement and could impact your retirement, because we are retirement and income planners with Franklin Retirement Solutions. For those getting ready to retire, for those that have retired, or those that have been retired a little bit, we can help you get your retirement plan in order so you don't run out of money before you run out of time. Typically, I like to go first just because I'm selfish, but this week we're going to change it up. We're going to let Mike go first. So, Mike, what are we talking about this week?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about HSAs. So it's a type of account that doesn't get too much attention.
Okay, what does HSA stand for?
HSA stands for Health Savings Account.
Okay, and does everybody have one of those?
No. So in order to have one, you have to have what qualifies as a high deductible health insurance plan. So the IRS sets different guidelines as far as what's considered high deductible, but typically it's usually anything over like $1,300 as a high deductible insurance plan. And the reason I wanted to talk about it today is because it's the only account where you can save and it's tax-free going in. So you get the pre-tax advantage there, but it's also tax-free coming out. Typically with other, savings vehicles for retirement, if you're doing a traditional IRA, that money's pre-tax, so you get a tax break going in, but when you take it out down the road, you're going to pay taxes on it. With a Roth IRA, you pay your taxes now, but when you take it out, you don't pay any taxes.
But then an HSA is only for health it's for health expenses, right?
Correct,
Not.
but there should be an asterisk there. So it can be used for any qualifying medical expenses, which, as we know, as you get older, you're going to have medical expenses. But the other thing is that any medical expenses that you incur at any point between now and, when you actually, retire, as long as you keep the receipt, you can use those expenses to qualify for your HSA distributions.
Okay.
So as an example, right, I have a daughter who's 4. If I'm putting money in an HSA, money that I'm not planning to take out until I'm 65, let's say 5 years from now, I pay $6,000 to get her braces.
Okay.
I can save that receipt now, right? Or 5 years from now. So at that point, I'll be 46.
Yeah.
20 years later, when I take the money out of the HSA, I can say, hey, this is me reimbursing myself for the $6,000 that I paid, in 2027 for these braces. So
now, there is one flaw with your theory there. Most dentists and dental surgeons are not going to put braces on a 9-year-old. They're going to wait for them to have their full set of adult teeth before they do braces.
And 6 years from now is in 2027.
That's true. No, yeah. That's true.
It's a good thing.
That was my first thought.
It's a good thing you don't work. It's a good thing you don't work with numbers every day.
Thanks, guys.
Math.
So the benefit of the HSA is that it's tax free going in
Mm-hmm.
and tax free coming out.
And presumably growing.
Right, and so you can invest that money. So if you want to use it as a supplement to a retirement savings plan, there's a couple advantages that it has to IRAs and Roth IRAs. Number one, there's no income restriction.
Okay.
And then the second thing is if you take that money out for a non-medical related expense before you're 65, there is a 20% penalty. However, once you're 65, that you can take it out for non-medical related expenses and
It
the
just becomes a
penalties leave.
savings account.
So it's essentially the same at that point. It's treated the same as an IRA,
Mm.
but it's not an IRA. So there's also no RMDs. So really, the only sort of caveat to the HSA is, I mean, A, you have to be able to afford the high deductible. B, you have to be able to pay your medical expenses out of pocket rather than from the HSA, because the idea is to use the HSA as a supplement to your retirement. And then it's just a matter of waiting till you're 65 to withdraw the money.
Yeah.
But
So
it's the only vehicle out there that you can put money in pre-tax and get money out tax-free. So we like to use the term triple tax savings because it's pre-tax going in, it's tax deferred while it's invested, and it's tax-free when you pull it out. So, for people making too much money to put into an IRA or a Roth IRA, it's definitely worth looking at. And if you're relatively healthy and you don't have, a chronic condition that's gonna cause you to hit that deductible every year, then it might be worth looking at.
yeah, so that is one of the things I want to point out. It's something to look at. Nothing we're talking about here is actionable. You should not be taking action based on what we're talking about in a podcast. Work with your advisor, get their advice, see what they have to say. If you don't have an advisor, give us a call at 215-657-9200. Shoot us an email to info@franklinrs.com. Get in touch with us. We'll try to help you out as best we can because that's what we do. Moving on, Kyle, we'll go on to you now.
All right. So this article actually, or my topic here actually ties a couple things together
Okay.
that we've discussed before and a new one as well. So the actual topic is Bitcoin.
Okay.
And so I think everybody knows Bitcoin and
Well, we
kind
can
of the story
assume, but
behind it.
give us a primer. It's a cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it's a cryptocurrency. There's a limited number of them, so the value of them is relatively stable and going up. I think right now it's at like $63,000
Per
for each
coin.
of these Bitcoin.
But it has been volatile in the past. It has fluctuated wildly.
It still is. It was at like 54 a week ago.
And then there's still some dubiousness over how solid the claims are because it's a digital fiat currency. There's no backing other than the code they're apparently mining.
Right, correct. So, obviously some people have said, "Oh, this is the future. We're all going to get rich off Bitcoin," and others have said, "What is this? There's nothing here. This is all just speculation." So, what I have is two articles, both off of Yahoo Finance, 1 week apart. So this first article quotes a famous economist named Peter Schiff. You may or may not have heard of him, but he's often quoted in things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the trading patterns and ETF inflows, and one of the things that we're talking about is they just came out recently over the past, I want to say, year with Bitcoin ETFs. So ETFs, if you're not familiar, are kind of like the new school mutual funds.
Mm-hmm.
They work a little bit differently, but that's essentially how they're positioned.
Well,
and
ETF
what they
stands
do.
for Exchange Traded Fund.
Exchange Traded Fund, exactly. And it says, based on the trading patterns and ETF inflows, it looks like the smart money is selling Bitcoin in the spot market, while the dumb money is buying it through ETFs. So what he's trying to say here is that the people that are really wanting to invest in Bitcoin already did.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon now and buying it through these ETFs that are now readily available and easily purchased, through any, for whatever brokerage firm you're using. So that's one opinion. This was out. He said this on the 7th of July.
Okay.
Okay. I also saw an article. This one was actually today, and this was quoted on the 15th of July.
So roughly 1 week later.
Exactly 1 week later,
Okay.
yes. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. And if you don't know BlackRock, they are the largest asset manager in the world. It's often talked about as them and Vanguard as the two biggest players in that industry.
Mm-hmm.
For all intents and purposes, they kind of own everything. And the quote from him was, "I was a proud skeptic, and I studied it, learned about it, and I came away saying my opinion 5 years ago was wrong. Here's my opinion today. I believe in the opportunity today. I believe Bitcoin is legitimate. I'm a major believer that there's a role for Bitcoin in portfolios. I see it as digital gold, which is certainly different than the way that it had been positioned originally,
Yeah.
but also not necessarily a bad thing. So what's the consensus here on Bitcoin?
Doesn't sound like there is one.
That's kind of what I'm getting here. But if you only saw one of these articles coming from these legitimate sources, it's on Yahoo Finance, which is obviously a legitimate platform. If you read just one of these, or just one or the other, you may come away with, oh my God, well, Bitcoin is. This looks like it's nothing. It looks like everybody's going to lose their money. This thing's a scam. If you read the one article, and in the other article, oh my God, this is the future. We're all going to get rich. So, two articles exactly a week apart on the same place, completely different opinions.
Yeah, and that often happens with everything. I mean, you go on Market Watch, and how often, you know, one day you see, such and such person says we're headed for a crash, and such and such person says the market's going to go up, another 20%. So there's always, for every person who's bullish, there's always going to be another person who's bearish. I'm not taking a side on either one of these articles, but it is worth pointing out that, obviously as the CEO of BlackRock, he has somewhat of a vested interest in these Bitcoin ETFs.
Isn't it amazing that this opinion changes now that BlackRock has a cryptocurrency ETF?
The biggest cryptocurrency ETF, by the way.
It is almost, well, I would say so, but I mean, the man's bald, so he really hasn't asked a barber if he needed a haircut lately, but it is in the same realm of asking a barber if you need a haircut.
Yep.
Yeah. So, bottom line on on Bitcoin, I don't know. I've kind of thought similarly that maybe it ends up positioned kind of the way that gold has been, but I have no idea. I don't completely understand how it works. I know the basics, but ultimately 20 years from now, is Bitcoin going to be a thing? I don't know.
I mean, gold, you've got millennia of cultures hoarding it, admiring it, wanting it. Gold has always been rare and desirable. I don't know that you're going to have that same draw or allure to something that exists on a computer that most people don't understand.
God forbid something happens to the power grid and all those computer records go out. Bitcoin is completely worthless and gone. So,
I mean, look at how many people
is that going to happen? Probably not, but it could.
Well, look at how many people lose their digital wallets, or the digital wallet companies that they trust disappear and somebody runs off with all the money.
Well, and with Bitcoin, if you lose your password to what do they call
to the locker or the wallet?
Yeah, what's the code? The name for the code that they use?
The blockchain.
Blockchain, yeah. You lose your blockchain code or password or whatever it is, you're screwed.
Yeah. The guy that had a hard drive with essentially $10 million worth of Bitcoin on it at the time, and he had 3 guesses to get the password off that hard drive, or he lost his money and he couldn't remember it.
Yeah.
That was what, 3-4 years ago?
I think so. So anything else, there's a risk there. There's a lot of uncertainty. Probably more so than with a lot of other financial instruments, but potentially it could be something that works well for you in the long term, but it also could be worthless in 10 years.
That it has a lot of hurdles to come over. The potential for fraud, the potential for being invalidated, the fact that it is essentially something we're all trusting to be valuable, and that's its value.
Well, and
A lot of hurdles.
the other thing too, and I read a book on this last year, but one of the big features of Bitcoin is supposed to be that it's anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
But the book I read last year, and I forget the title of it, but it basically like they've figured out the blockchain, and it's actually easier for them to track Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
than it is to track cash. So one of its like key features of anonymity is completely out the window.
Well, that and anonymity depends on the marketplace in which you use the currency. So
Well,
the currency may be anonymous, but where you use it certainly is not.
and they're going to figure out a way to tax it.
Of course.
That was part of the whole thing in the beginning too, was that it couldn't be tracked, so it couldn't be taxed. They're going to figure that piece out as well. So who knows? And as Mike pointed out, you got to look at your source.
You do.
Larry Fink, he runs BlackRock. BlackRock is selling this ETF. Obviously, there's a vested interest there. Peter Schiff, I don't know if he's involved in anything that doesn't use Bitcoin. But it's, certainly you got to consider the source with anything that you're looking at.
And plus, Schiff is primarily, he has a history of being a stockbroker, but he is primarily a media personality now. So he's going to go with a contrarian take if it draws him more. He's more interested in the publicity.
He's going to go with the established things that he knows. He doesn't know Bitcoin because he's been around a long time and he understands stocks and bonds and all the traditional stuff. He may not necessarily understand Bitcoin, so it's in his interest, at least in some fashion, to maybe talk it down. So
Right.
Again, consider your source, consider what it is you're doing. There's always bias in all of these articles. Just look around, know what you're buying. Don't take more risk than you can afford to take. And several takeaways here, but to me that's kind of two of the biggest.
So let's jump right off of that, since Bitcoin is so easy to understand. Let's go to another easy to comprehend topic. We're going to talk about AI, not in any real depth, thankfully, because I don't know that anybody can speak at depth about AI. But really, I mean, you're starting to see the market really driven by AI. You're seeing NVIDIA surging because of the power of their chips. And you're now starting to see a lot of turmoil in utilities as the power demands of AI really come into focus. That I think the stat is, for every query you run on ChatGPT, which is ChatGPT, if you're not familiar, is the online portal for a lot of people to access a very popular AI model developed by OpenAI. So ChatGPT is kind of the modern day Google. It's what people use when they say they're using AI on a very rudimentary basis. There are other AI models out there. Facebook has them, Microsoft has them, Google has them. OpenAI developed ChatGPT. That's kind of the one everybody goes to right now. So one search on ChatGPT uses 10 times the power as one equivalent Google search. But to kind of keep an idea of how this works and why the companies that are involved. So a big part of AI is data collection. So these companies are either buying access to digital data stores or they're just downright stealing them. Social networks are getting mined. Reddit is a gold mine for data because so many people talk. And basically what they're doing is these AI companies are harvesting this data, images, videos, music, audio files, and certainly text files. And they're feeding it into these massive processor banks. So if you imagine you're working in Excel or just any kind of decision, you make one of the basic formats is an if-then statement. If a circumstance happens, do this. If it doesn't happen, do this. So there are huge banks of processors doing very, very complicated if-then statements, just banks and banks and banks and banks and banks of if-then statements to sort this stuff, organize it. That's why companies like NVIDIA and ATI, which is now AMD, that's why these processor companies are so valuable, because video processing companies like NVIDIA, who's primarily done video card chips for the majority of their time, whereas your computer desktop processor might process 2 threads at a time, 4 threads at a time, 8, 16. These graphic cards can process thousands of threads at a time. So they have become invaluable to the neural networks, they call them, this complex series of processors for AI, but they suck up a lot of power. That's why we're seeing this. So just looking at it, just looking at headlines from this week, I've seen AI is using so much power that coal plants that were scheduled to shut down are not getting shut down. There's even talk, it was in the Washington Post, there's even talk that a lot of nuclear facilities that were shut down are going to come back online. 3 Mile Island may come back online. And now companies backed by people like Bill Gates are talking about bringing fusion power plants on board, which is interesting because we've had nuclear fission power plants. You guys know the difference between fission and fusion?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody out there that doesn't, I'll explain it pretty briefly. We talk about splitting the atom. If you saw Oppenheimer last year, big talk about splitting the hydrogen atom, forming nuclear energy. That's fission, taking one atom and splitting it into parts. That produces some energy. It produces a lot of energy. But if you can go fusion, which is bringing atoms together to form more volatile atoms, that has the potential to create a lot more energy. We've just never been able to perfect it. We only got in December of last year, we got the first test where fusion produced more energy than it took to cause the reaction. That's called an ignition point. Super technical, but it's a long way off. So short term, we're seeing a big power grab. We're seeing companies starting to build their own power plants. I think Facebook is building their own power plants. What's that going to do to the utilities market? With fossil fuels in more demand, with power in more demand, who can say? What's it going to do to these chip companies as innovations keep producing? Who can say? What happens if this becomes another, what was the big trend 10 years ago? Big data, which was just other people's data, and a bunch of companies made a lot of claims and saw some short-term gains anyway on promises of analyzing big data, and no. A lot of consequences, a lot of people saying they think they know what's going to happen. A lot of people think AI is just a matter of saying, computer, build me a website, and AI is going to do all the heavy lifting. It's not. Is AI going to cost some jobs? Yes. Is AI going to create a whole lot of new jobs? Yes. But it's really, I think we're seeing a shift. We're not seeing a decimation of any industry. We're going to see a shift. You got to know what you're doing. And who knows, this could turn into another thing like big data, like 3D TVs.
Forgot about 3D.
Oh, yeah. 3D TVs, and then the curved TVs that we thought were going to be revolutionary.
Or the plasma screens that were big for 2 years.
Well, plasmas did beat LEDs on brightness back in the day, but they had the burn-in issues. But a lot of these technical innovations, people that are trying to grasp it, people that are trying to say they're in on it, I think my favorite quote is that, with any of these new innovations, it's like sex in high school. The people that say they're doing it probably aren't doing it. The people that are doing it aren't doing it very well. So keep that in mind, just like we do with Bitcoin. Who knows what's going to happen with it in the long term? Short term, yeah, there's a lot of news. There's a lot of bluster. There's a lot of things to capitalize on. Long term, who knows how reliable they're going to be.
Can we produce enough energy really to do that, and without completely decimating, the environmental concerns that would come with that?
If the coal plants stay online, I don't think we have enough coal. I think there are. I mean, it's with anything. The more we work on it, the more efficient they get. Look at what power we pulled to power a desktop 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You think about the power supplies we needed for a little inefficient 386 chip. And now what is it? Moore's law. The number of transistors doubles every 2 years, but the fingerprint is shrinking. So the power consumption shrinks every time we have a new generation of chips. I think we're going to use less and less power per chip. I think we're going to use more and more chips. So
if the incentive is worth it, somebody will figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, you're probably right. But that that's an opportunity for as you mentioned, utility companies, material companies mining this stuff out of the ground. So there's peripheral industries or areas, if you will.
I mean, solar energy alone, just the sun puts more energy on the planet than we could ever use. It's just a matter of harnessing it. The potential for nuclear energy, if we can get fusion off the ground, yeah. I don't think it's a long-term concern, but definitely on the short term, and we might see some pricing volatility as the need for energy, we might not have enough energy to supply in the short term, and we might see a cost war, a run up in costs as people try to vie for what's available.
Yeah, well, I mean, like anything that is going to be a big technological change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a risk to it. It may work, it may not. It could become a haves and haves not scenario. I mean, there's a ton of possibilities. Nobody knows yet. All we know right now is that these AI stocks are going through the roof and
Yeah.
continue to go through the roof. And what's the ultimate long-term answer or result? I don't know. Come back in 20 years and let's look and see.
And not for nothing, I'm getting a weather alert on my laptop here that it's 11:30 in the morning and it's 92 degrees and we're expected to go. Where are we going to be today?
Today's gonna be the hottest day of the week, right?
The hottest day of the year so far.
Hottest day of the year so far. Yeah.
Possibly 97, but there's talk of it hitting triple digits. So that certainly has nothing to do with our energy consumption at all. Not at all. Nothing to worry about.
No, never. Stay hydrated.
And on that happy note, while you sit in hopefully functioning air conditioning, if anything we've talked about today has piqued your interest, give us a call at 215-657-9200 or shoot us an email at info@franklinrs.com. Once again, I am Nick Hamner. This is Mike and Mike Hart, Kyle Plotkin, thanking you for watching, and we will see you next week.